Kitco Mining's special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.
It's been over a year since the advent of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and Russia is, of course, one of the leading producers of nickel. How has the nickel industry adjusted in this period of time? Joining us now is Mark Selby. Mark is CEO of Canada Nickel, and he's going to give us a sense of how the market has adapted for this critical metal. Mark, welcome.
Great, good, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Yeah, I know, obviously it was the Russia conflict that led to LME prices spiking to over $100,000 a ton back about 15 months ago. That obviously set about a number of changes. Now, at the end of the day, when material is banned, it still finds its way to market. So, it has gone into China and gone into some other places, but in the meantime, two big things. One, it causes premiums to spike in the near term. But I think the larger issue, and a similar issue that we're facing with China and why the U.S. government has got the Inflation Reduction Act, so all the supply chain support in there, is really fundamentally it really exposed, how exposed we are to a hostile country's impact on a critical commodity. I mean, nickel's used in stainless steel, alloys to make jet engines and all kinds of other important materials. And now, its big use is emerging as, one of the key ingredients in making long-range, electric vehicles possible. So, having a critical supply in hostile hands, is become, quite problematic globally.
Right. So, looking at the big picture, your company's predicting nickel demand could actually double by 2030. And you say many people are still underestimating the potential for this demand. Can you explain that? Because we know that nickel is a critical metal for EVs, for a lot of the critical developments.
Yeah. So nickel historic use has been used in stainless steel. That's been a very high growth material. That's grown 5 or 6% a year, which has led to nickel demand of 4 to 5% a year. That's double what you see in copper and carbon steel and so forth, because stainless steel is a long life, highly recyclable, all the real attributes you look for in products today. So we don't see that slowing down at all. Then you layer in all this new demand coming from the electric vehicle sector. And so, yeah, we need at least a double by 2030. And if not, even more demand, beyond that. What's complicating it, not only do you have, hostile countries with a critical part of the supply chain, in nickel, over the last 15 years, Indonesia has become the world's largest nickel supplier by a very large margin. They're over half of global supply today. And within another 5 years, they'll be 3/4 of supply. The challenge with that is in today's market, it's twofold. One, most of that production is controlled by Chinese companies, which again is the primary target of all the efforts that the Canadian government, the U.S. government, with the Inflation Reduction Act, is really aiming at. And number two, there are production methods used in Indonesia that use a massive amount of coal to produce that nickel. And so you're looking at carbon footprints of 50 to 80 tons of CO2 per ton of nickel. So we're very fortunate, with our Crawford discovery just north of Timmins. It's not only large scale, it's the largest sulfide discovery in North America. These types of deposits can generate nickel with a very low carbon footprint to start, and then they're hosted in rocks that have this great ability that when they're exposed to air, they spontaneously absorb CO2. So we're designing our process plant to be not only one of the largest nickel sulfide operations globally, but it'll also be one of the largest carbon storage facilities in Canada. And that allows us to tap two different streams of funding to be able to take the project forward.
Right. So you're going to be lower emissions to begin with, and then you're also potentially being able to subtract some of the existing emissions using in your operations.
Yeah, we developed a very simple process where we can take high strength CO2, inject it, as the material is going through the mill, and so just before it goes out to the tailings pond, process it for about 6 hours, and in that time frame, we're able to pick up the equivalent of almost 20 tons of CO2 per ton of nickel, or 1 million tons per annum. To give people context, the largest carbon storage facility in Canada right now was a facility built by Shell for $1.3 billion, which will handle about 1.2 million tons per annum of carbon storage. So we really are talking about a very large carbon storage facility, right here in Ontario.
And right in line with your business. So this is almost a positive byproduct in a sense.
Oh, for sure. Like you get with the government providing funding for carbon capture and storage, and the government providing funding for critical minerals production, our process plant will effectively do both. It starts with some rock, it pulls the nickel and cobalt out and some iron and chrome, and then, before it hits the tailings facility, we've been able to store the equivalent of 1 million tons of carbon a year.
That's amazing. Now, that's the Canadian picture. Let's tell me a little bit about the Inflation Reduction Act. How has that impacted nickel, you guys, but also the nickel industry as a whole?
So, what that very clearly established, before a lot of governments were talking about support for the industry, but that put very specific concrete financial measures in place, which then other governments, have moved to match. So, here in Canada, at the end of March, the government put forward a 30% refundable tax credit for investment in mining and processing of critical minerals. What that means is, we're getting back as cash 30 cents on every dollar that we invest, and for us, that works out to somewhere between 15 and 20% of our total capital budget for our project that's going to come back from the federal government. So that's a massive support. We're going to see support from the Ontario government. And again, just because we're based in Canada, there are a number of programs that the various government departments have announced in the US that we actually qualify for. So, we're expecting very, very substantial levels of support. Once we get our feasibility study done in a few months here, we're looking forward to basically knocking on doors with a very large shopping bag, and Halloween comes early with lots of $100 million bill candies tossed in the bucket. So.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like the prospects are very good for the company and for North American nickel in general, I guess.
No, exactly. And that's the way people need to think about it is, I think nickel is going to be one of these commodities that you'll see one price for North America and Europe and another price for higher carbon Chinese controlled production in Asia.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you for taking the time. Enjoy the conversation.
Thank you. I'm Ernest Hoffman for Kitco Mining. Stay tuned for more coverage from the Mining Investment Event of the North, and don't forget to subscribe.
Kitco Mining special coverage of the Mining Investment Event of the North is brought to you by EMX Royalty Corp.